Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better. What are non-sages like, and how can we help ourselves? At the best of times, people are anxious, lonely, bitter, prejudiced, annoyed, and confused. The Economist, May 23-29, 2020. That accords well with the understanding I argued for in Mastery in 7 Steps. We are lazy, greedy, ambitious, impatient, selfish, vain, and ignorant, end quote. I didn't just say that. I argued for the view that it's natural and rational to be that way. Of course, my argument could be unsound. If you disagree with its conclusion, examine the argument for yourself. The chief topic of this video is to present Hui-Neng's chief recommendation to you. Hui-Neng, 638 to 713 of the Christian era, was the last of the great early Grand Masters or ancestors of Zen in ancient China. He lived during the Tang dynasty, which many consider the zenith of Chinese culture. He founded the so-called Southern School of Zen and emphasized in his teachings the immediacy of direct insight. Quotes from him that follow are from his sutra and his commentary on the Diamond Sutra, translated by Thomas Cleary. What is the mind of sages, or saints, like? The mind of saints has no arousal and quiescence, going and coming. There is only the constant shining of basic awareness. Therefore, it is said to be absorbed in noncontention, absorption, samadi, detachment. Ask the great question, who is detached? Quote, who is aware of not being in movement? End quote. It's puzzling. Thought without thought is correct. Thought with thought becomes false. End quote. He means by thought without thought, detachment from thought. In other words, not identifying with thought. He means by thought with thought, attachment to thought. In other words, identifying with thought. If so, to identify with thoughts is incorrect, whereas to detach from thoughts is correct. In particular, detach from all thoughts of past and future. Don't think about what is already past, and don't keep thinking about what is yet to come, end quote. Also, don't follow what we previously called the method of thinking. Quote, self-enlightenment and cultivation are not to be found in argument, end quote. Since there are 2 methods, namely the method of thinking and the method of surrendering, and we shouldn't follow the method of thinking, we should follow the method of surrendering. To argue is to be contentious, to attach to or identify with positions. It's very important to realize that identifying with positions, attaching to them, inflates the ego. As Eckhart Tolle puts it in A New Earth, quote, where there is no identification, there is no attachment, one of the great sources of suffering, end quote. As Hui-Neng puts it, quote, if you do not put a stop to contention, you are increasing egoism and have not detached, end quote. Why? To attach to a position is to identify with it, and that strengthens the egoic mind. The stronger the egoic mind, the more separation there is. Since dissatisfaction, suffering, misery is caused by separation, the stronger the egoic mind, the more it contends, the more dissatisfaction there is. Almost always, without intending to, non-sages create their own dissatisfaction. What's the cure? Hui-Neng's point is to stop contending, stop taking positions. How? Quote, absorption in one practice means always acting with a unified direct mind in all situations, no matter what you are doing, end quote. He's referring to a meditative practice. In our terminology, living with a unified direct mind means living in awareness as opposed to living in thought. This is because the way to live well like sages is to live in alignment with reality. What does that mean? All forms are empty of substance, essence, whatness, self. The essence of things is empty and silent, end quote. So, when the thinking mind is empty and silent, we are in alignment with reality. In other words, when we drop all thoughts, we are in alignment with reality. It means that then there's no separation between awareness and reality, which is unity. Unity heals, whereas separation harms. How, for example, should we relate to others? When you talk with people, outwardly be unattached to appearances while in the midst of appearances. Inwardly, be unattached to emptiness while in the midst of emptiness, end quote. In other words, sages live lives of non-attachment. So, quote, just let your mind be like space without clinging to a mental image of space, functioning responsibly, without obstruction, unminding in action and repose. Doing that, living as a sage, requires us to realize our own nature. Quote, each of you observe your mind yourself. See your original nature yourself. If you see all things without the mind being affected or attached, this is freedom from thought, end quote. Since all thought separates and creates dissatisfaction, freedom from thought unites and diminishes dissatisfaction. To detach from thinking is to detach from dissatisfaction. Everything is one. The one is everything. Going and coming freely, the substance of mind without blockage. This is prajna, in other words, wisdom. We all have the same essence, being, which Buddhists call Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is fundamentally no different in ignorant people and wise people. It is just because of difference in confusion and enlightenment that there is ignorance and wisdom. The original essential nature is Buddha, end quote. The conditioned thinking mind obstructs our realizing that. Use meditation to detach from thinking. Again, since there are no emotions without thoughts, detaching from thinking automatically dissolves emotions. Those who realize this teaching are free of thought, recollection, and clinging. Employing their own essential nature of being as is, seeing with insight, they neither grasp nor reject anything at all, end quote. That's what life is like for a sage. Without dissatisfaction, peaceful, untroubled, serene. We all have the opportunity to find that out for ourselves. Let's end emotional distress.